My name is Rai Willow. I'm 38 years old, a mother of 3, living in a peaceful suburb of Sydney, Australia. If you'd asked me 6 months ago, I would have described my life as ordinary, hectic but steady. I had no idea that June 9th, 2023, would turn my world upside down. On that day, I died. And what I witnessed beyond this life left me shaken in ways I still can't fully explain. It was a gloomy, rain-soaked Friday morning. My house buzzed with its usual storm of activity. The kids were running late for school, breakfast dishes stacked high in the sink, and I felt the all-too-familiar grip of stress weighing me down. As I hurried down the stairs to grab my youngest child's forgotten lunchbox, my foot missed a step. Everything happened so fast. The world spun as gravity took hold. My body crashed against the stairs, each impact knocking the wind from my lungs. Pain shot through me, sharp, merciless, and unyielding, until, suddenly, there was nothing. No pain, no sound, just an icy stillness that crept over me, like frost slowly spreading across a window pane. The next thing I remember was hearing my husband's voice. I was cradled in his arms, his whole body trembling as he carried me to the car. "Stay with me, Rai," he begged, his voice thick with desperation and fear. The ride to the hospital felt like a blur. Rain lashed against the windshield, and red taillights streaked past like smudges on a canvas. My husband kept looking at me, his eyes full of panic, whispering frantic prayers under his breath. But none of it could stop the pull I felt. Something unseen and unyielding was dragging me away. My breaths came in short, shallow gasps, my vision dimmed, and an invisible weight pressed hard against my chest. Then, everything shifted. 1 second, I was in the car, feeling my husband's arms around me. The next, I was outside of it, staring at my own lifeless body slumped in the passenger seat. It was a surreal and disorienting sight. I felt no pain anymore. No weight. No fear. I was free. The world around me looked sharper, more vivid, and yet, it felt utterly unfamiliar. I saw my husband shouting, his face streaked with rain and tears, but his voice sounded far away, like an echo in a cavern. I reached out, wanting to comfort him, to tell him I was still there. But my words wouldn't come. I was weightless, unbound, and utterly alone. Then, the scene vanished. The rain, the car, my husband, it all dissolved into nothingness. I was standing in a vast, radiant realm filled with indescribable beauty. The air shimmered with colors I had never seen before. The ground beneath me wasn't solid but felt alive, humming with energy. It was glorious beyond imagination, yet I wasn't at peace. A sense of unease coiled in my chest. I knew, somehow, that this was no dream. It was real, far more real than the life I had left behind. That's when I saw him. In the distance, a figure appeared, walking toward me. His clothing was dazzling white, radiating a brilliance that didn't hurt my eyes but filled me with awe. Though I couldn't make out his facial features, I felt his gaze pierce straight into me, seeing every flaw, every thought, every secret I'd ever buried. "Rai," he called, his voice unlike anything I'd ever heard, familiar, like a melody I'd known forever but forgotten until that moment. "You cannot stay here. There is something you must see, something you must tell." Before I could reply, the light around us dimmed. Shadows crept in from every direction, and a vision began to unfold before me. What I saw next will remain seared into my heart forever. The radiant glow around me vanished, replaced by a suffocating darkness so thick it pressed against me like a weight. Then, slowly, images began to emerge from the void, vivid, clear, and disturbingly real. It was as if I were watching the world from above, yet it wasn't the world I knew. A date flashed before me, 2025. At first, it all seemed normal. I saw families gathered at dining tables, children playing in parks, and bustling cities full of life. But the peace didn't last. Cracks began to form, not in the ground, but in people. Subtle at first, like hairline fractures in glass, but they spread quickly. The air grew thick with a sense of dread. Then the images sharpened, and the horror unfolded before my eyes. I saw conflict. Husbands arguing with wives. Parents shouting at children. Friends turning on each other. It wasn't just disagreements. It was rage. The anger between them was intense, like an open wound that refused to heal. Beneath it all, I saw something far more sinister: unforgiveness. It clung to them like chains, binding their souls in bitterness. Then, without warning, the first wave struck. Death swept over the world like a shadow, sudden and indiscriminate. Homes grew silent as loved ones were snatched away. Families were broken by grief so raw it echoed in my soul. I watched as brilliant minds, doctors, artists, and innovators, were cut down in their prime. It wasn't random. These were people marked by the grip of unforgiveness. Their refusal to release bitterness had sealed their fate. I turned to the man in white, my voice trembling. Why is this happening? His face was streaked with sorrow, and tears glistened in his eyes. Unforgiveness, he said, his voice heavy with pain. It destroys more than relationships. It poisons souls. In 2025, many will cling to it, and death will claim them. Bitterness binds them, and they cannot break free. More scenes flickered before me. Hospitals overflowing with the sick and dying, cities submerged in grief, and the ground itself groaning under the weight of humanity's sins. Natural disasters swept through the earth. Hurricanes, earthquakes, floods, each one fiercer than the last. Flames consumed entire cities. Nations crumbled under the pressure of it all. I saw lines of people gathered in a vast, barren wasteland. Their faces were hollow, their bodies hunched under invisible burdens. They waited in silence, eyes cast downward. "What is this place?" I asked, barely able to breathe. The man in white looked at them with compassion and sorrow. "This is where souls come to give an account," he replied. Many lived lives of success but carried hardened hearts. They clung to grudges until it was too late. I watched as one soul after another stepped forward, each facing a moment of reckoning. Their sorrow was crushing. They saw their mistakes with perfect clarity, every missed opportunity to love, every chance to forgive that they had rejected. The vision shifted again. I was taken to a place of torment unlike anything I could have imagined. It wasn't just fire. It was hopelessness. Regret itself had taken form, and it consumed the souls trapped there. Their wails echoed endlessly, each cry laced with anguish. Their hearts had chosen hate over love, pride over humility, and bitterness over grace. The man in white openly wept. "This is not my desire for them," he said, his voice breaking. "But choices have consequences." I felt a surge of urgency. This can't happen. I wanted to scream, to beg, to do something. But before I could move, another vision came. This time, it was different. I saw light breaking through the chaos. People knelt in prayer. Families embraced, offering each other forgiveness. Communities came together. Faces once hard with pride now glowed with peace. Their humility shone like a beacon amid the storm. "The future is not set," the man said firmly. "This is why you must return. Tell them what you have seen. Warn them that time is short." I wanted to stay. The peace of that place called to me. But I knew he was right. He looked at me, his eyes filled with both love and authority. "Rai, your mission is not over. Call them to forgiveness, love, and truth. The world depends on it." Before I could reply, the light wrapped around me, and I felt myself being pulled back into the chaos of the world I'd left behind. When I opened my eyes, I found myself surrounded by the soft glow of hospital lights, the rhythmic beeping of monitors, and the tear-filled eyes of my husband and children. My chest felt heavy, not from pain, but from the overwhelming weight of what I had just experienced. A flood of emotions poured out as tears streamed down my face. But one thing was certain. I had been given a second chance, not only to live but to bring change, not just in my life, but in the lives of others. The days that followed felt surreal. The hospital room became a fragile sanctuary, sheltering me from the enormity of what I had witnessed. Yet, even in the stillness, my heart could not escape the vivid echoes of 2025. The faces of those left behind, the anguish of souls in turmoil, and Jesus' urgent command to share his message. They burned in my mind like a fire that wouldn't die. When I was finally released from the hospital, my husband, Luke, drove me home. Relief was written all over his face, but I could sense the questions he was holding back. That night, after the children went to bed, we sat across from each other at the dining table. My hands trembled as I recounted everything. The visions, the words, and the presence of the man clothed in brilliant white. Luke sat in stunned silence, gripping my hands so tightly it almost hurt. Finally, his voice broke the quiet. "Rai, how do we even begin to tell people something like this?" he asked, his voice low but filled with concern. I squeezed his hands, my voice barely above a whisper. "We start with us," I said, tears brimming in my eyes. "We release the grudges we've held, we forgive one another, and we love with everything we have. Then, we share it with whoever will listen. This isn't something we can keep to ourselves, Luke. People need to know." The next morning, I woke up early, my heart burdened with the weight of the mission ahead. I knelt by my bed and prayed with everything in me, asking God for strength and clarity. Gratitude filled me. I had been given a second chance, but the enormity of the task loomed large. I could still hear Jesus' words ringing in my spirit. "Tell them what you have seen." I knew where I had to start, with my own family. It wasn't easy. Some wounds had been open for years, the kind you cover up but never heal. Unspoken words, old arguments, and buried pain had driven cracks into our relationships. But I understood what was at stake. One by one, I picked up the phone and made calls I had been avoiding for too long. I apologized with sincerity, no longer concerned with who was right or wrong. The response was unlike anything I expected. My siblings broke down, my parents softened, and the icy distance that had kept us apart for years slowly melted away. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start, a small glimpse of the power of forgiveness. But that was only the beginning. The next part of the mission was much harder, sharing the message with the world. I wrestled with doubt. Who am I to tell people about something so profound? I'm not a preacher, a writer, or anyone important. I'm just a 38-year-old mother from Sydney. But then I remembered something I'd once heard. God doesn't call the equipped, He equips the called. With that truth in my heart, I took a leap of faith. I began speaking at local churches, sharing my testimony with anyone willing to listen. What happened next stunned me. People didn't just listen, they wept. They felt it. Their hearts broke as they reflected on the unforgiveness they had carried for years. After each service, strangers would approach me, eyes wet with tears, confessing their struggles and promising to reach out to estranged loved ones. But not everyone welcomed the message. Some dismissed me as just another woman with a wild story. A few mocked me outright, calling me delusional. It hurt more than I was willing to admit. I wanted to shrink away from it all, to retreat into silence. But every time I felt like giving up, I remembered the tears in Jesus' eyes. I remembered His voice, steady and firm, filled with love that never wavered. He wasn't asking for perfection. He was asking for obedience. One night, as I prepared to speak at another church, I knelt beside my bed and wept. "God, it's too much. I'm not strong enough for this." But as I sat in the quiet, His words came back to me with clarity. "Tell them what you have seen." That evening, something shifted. As I stood before the crowd, I felt a new boldness fill me. My voice didn't shake, and I didn't hold back. 2025 is not just a warning, I declared, looking into the sea of faces. It's a chance to forgive, to love, and to return to God before it's too late. Yes, what I saw was terrifying, but it wasn't the end of the story. There is hope. There is always hope. The room went still. No one coughed, shuffled, or whispered. It was as if every person in that crowd was holding their breath. Their eyes met mine, and I knew then that they weren't just hearing my words, they were feeling them. Hearts were being moved, walls were being broken. Looking back on that experience now, I know it wasn't just a wake-up call for me. It was a call for all of us. The visions of 2025 were a glimpse into the consequences of unforgiveness and bitterness. What happens when we let anger and pride consume us. But it was also a sign of hope, a chance to rewrite the future before it's too late. I don't know everything about what's to come, but I do know this. The same God who revealed those visions is the same God who offers redemption. And as long as I have breath in my lungs, I will keep sharing His message, one heart, one soul, one life at a time. Now, I ask you, yes, you reading or listening to these words, will you hear it? Will you let go of the bitterness, the pain, and the grudges you've carried for too long? Will you choose love, forgiveness, and the unshakable peace that only Jesus can give? The choice is yours. The time is now. Let's face 2025 together, not with fear, but with faith, with love, and with hearts that are free from the weight of unforgiveness. If you found this content helpful and meaningful, I encourage you to take a moment to subscribe, like, and share this video with others. Your support helps this channel grow and reach more people with the powerful message of hope, forgiveness, and faith. Don't forget to click the notification bell so you'll be the first to know whenever we release new videos. Together, we can spread this message and make a lasting impact in the lives of those who need it most. Thank you for being part of this journey.